Captain Zilara pressed her long fingers against the cold metal wall of the research ship Harmony's Light. Outside the viewing port, stars moved slowly past as the ship traveled through space. But these were not peaceful times for looking at stars. The Vrex had come 3 months ago. Zilara remembered the first reports from the outer colonies. The messages had been short and full of fear. They came without warning, the colonists had said. They destroyed everything. They took our children. The Calorians were a peaceful people. They had never known war. Their ancestors had been plant-eaters on gentle worlds with soft grass and warm suns. For thousands of years they had built their society around sharing and helping each other. They made beautiful art and studied the stars. They grew wonderful gardens and wrote poetry about flowers. But the Vrex were different. The Vrex were hunters. They had sharp teeth and claws. They came from dark worlds where only the strongest survived. They saw the Calorian worlds with their peaceful cities and green farms, and they wanted to take everything. Zilara walked down the narrow hallway of her ship. Her crew was small, only 12 Calorians working together to study old ruins and forgotten planets. They were scientists, not soldiers. None of them knew how to fight. Captain, called Theron from the research lab. He was young for a Calorian, only 60 years old. His fur was still bright silver instead of the deep gray of older Calorians. I found something in the data we collected from the ruins on Kistara. Zilara entered the lab. Computer screens showed symbols and numbers that hurt her eyes to look at. What did you find? Theron pointed to the main screen. These symbols, they talk about a place called Earth. The old records say it was a death world. Zilara felt her skin grow cold. Death worlds were planets so dangerous that most species could not live there. The stories said such worlds created creatures so violent and strong that they were like monsters from bad dreams. The records are very old, Theron continued, but they give coordinates. A location in space where this Earth might be. Why are you showing me this? Zilara asked. Theron was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because the records also say that the creatures from Earth were warriors. Real warriors. The kind that never gave up and never ran away. Zilara looked at the screen again. The coordinates glowed softly in the dark lab. She thought about her people on the colony worlds. She thought about the children who had been taken by the Vrex. She thought about the peaceful cities that were now empty ruins. Captain, came another voice. It was Velen, her oldest crew member. His gray fur was almost white with age. We just received another message from the Calorian Council. Zilara followed Velen to the communication center. The message was short like all the recent ones. The Vrex had taken 3 more worlds. The Calorian defense ships had tried to stop them, but their shields and peaceful weapons were not enough. Thousands more Calorians were dead or missing. We have tried everything, Zilara said to herself. We have tried talking to them. We have tried hiding from them. We have tried running away. Nothing works. She looked at the message again. At the bottom it said something that made her heart feel heavy. The Council estimates the Vrex will reach our home worlds in 4 months. We have no more options. If anyone has ideas for how to stop them, please respond immediately. Zilara returned to the research lab. Theron was still looking at the old records about Earth. Tell me more about this death world, she said. Theron read from the screen. The planet had high gravity. The air was poison to most species. The weather was violent with terrible storms. The ground shook and mountains exploded with fire. Most of the creatures that lived there were predators that hunted other creatures. And the intelligent species? Zilara asked. They were called humans. The records say they were persistence hunters. They would chase their prey for days without stopping. They lived in groups and used tools. They had forward-facing eyes like predators, but they also worked together like herd animals. Zilara thought about this. Forward-facing eyes meant they were hunters, but working together meant they cared about each other. It was strange. The records also say, Theron continued, that humans had something called war. They would fight large battles with thousands of individuals, but they also had something called mercy. They would help creatures that were weaker than them. That makes no sense, said Velen, who had been listening. Predators do not help prey. Maybe, said Zilara slowly. That is why they survived on a death world. She stared at the coordinates for a long time. Outside, the stars continued their slow dance across the black sky. Somewhere out there, the Vrex were moving closer to the Calorian homeworlds. Somewhere else maybe there was a planet called Earth with creatures called humans. Captain, said Theron quietly. What are you thinking? Zilara made her decision. Send a message to those coordinates. Use the strongest signal we can make. What should the message say? Zilara thought about her people. She thought about the children who cried at night because they missed their parents. She thought about the beautiful cities that were now empty. She thought about the poems and songs and gardens that would disappear if the Vrex won. Record this, she said. Theron started the recording system. Zilara took a deep breath and began to speak. To any who can hear this message, we are the Calorians. We are a peaceful people, but we are dying. A species called the Vrex is destroying our worlds. They take our children and burn our cities. We have tried to make peace with them, but they do not want peace. They only want to take everything from us. She paused, thinking about what to say next. We do not know how to fight. We do not know how to be warriors. Our ancestors were plant eaters who lived in safe places. We make art and study the stars and grow gardens. But now our gardens are burned and our art is broken and our children are gone. Her voice became stronger. If there are any warriors left in this galaxy, please. We are not asking you to save us. We cannot ask strangers to die for us. But maybe you can teach us. Maybe you can show us how to protect ourselves, how to save our children, how to save our worlds. She looked at Theron and Valen. They were watching her with large eyes full of hope and fear. We will give you anything we have. Our knowledge, our technology, our friendship. We just want our children to be safe. We want to live in peace again. Please, if anyone hears this, help us learn how to save ourselves. Theron stopped the recording. Should I send it, Captain? Zilara nodded. Send it to the Earth coordinates. Send it with everything we have. The message began its long journey through space. It would travel for months at the speed of light, crossing the empty darkness between stars. Maybe it would reach nothing but cold rocks and dead planets. Maybe the creatures called humans were just stories from old records. But maybe, just maybe, somewhere in the galaxy there were still warriors who remembered what it meant to protect the innocent. As Harmony's light continued its journey through space, Captain Zilara watched the stars and hoped that her desperate message would find someone willing to help her people learn how to fight back. The Vrex were coming. Time was running out. But for the first time in months, Zilara felt a small spark of hope burning in her heart. Captain Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee when the universe changed forever. She sat in the captain's chair of the UES Resilience, looking out at the stars through the main viewing screen. Her ship was on a routine patrol near the edge of human space, checking on the mining stations and research outposts that marked humanity's quiet expansion into the galaxy. Humans had been traveling among the stars for 200 years now. They had found many worlds and built many colonies, but they had also learned to be very careful about meeting other species. The first contact with aliens had not gone well. The Altarians had been peaceful plant eaters, much like the Calorians. When they saw humans, with their forward-facing eyes and strong bodies and meat-eating teeth, they had screamed and run away. They called humans the nightmare predators, and warned other species to stay away from Earth. After that, humanity had decided to expand quietly. They avoided contact with other species when possible. They built their colonies on empty worlds far from alien trade routes. Most of the galaxy thought humans were just scary stories that parents told to make their children behave. Captain, called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communications station. We're receiving a strange signal. It's very old. Probably been traveling through space for months. Put it on the main screen, Sarah said. The image that appeared showed a creature Sarah had never seen before. It looked somewhat like the Altarians, but with silver fur and larger eyes. The creature looked tired and sad and desperate. To any who can hear this message, the creature began. We are the Calorians. Sarah listened to the entire message. When it ended, the bridge was very quiet. Well, said Commander Torres, Sarah's second-in-command. That's something. Dr. Amara Okafor, the ship's doctor and expert on alien psychology, was frowning at her tablet. The message came from the direction of the Calorian Republic. I have some files on them from our intelligence reports. What do you know? Sarah asked. They're a peaceful species, very advanced technology, especially their defensive systems. They have never fought a war in their recorded history. They're exactly the kind of species that would call for help instead of fighting. And the Vrex? Asked Torres. Dr. Okafor's expression grew darker. Carnivorous species from the Outer Rim. They've been expanding aggressively for the past 50 years. They don't negotiate or trade, and they just take what they want. Sarah stared at the screen where the Calorian's desperate face had been. They're asking us to teach them how to fight. Captain, said Torres carefully. You know what happened the last time we made contact with a peaceful species. The Altarians still have nightmares about us. Sarah knew Torres was right. Humans had learned to avoid contact because every meeting ended the same way. The other species would look at humanity's history, the wars, the violence, the way humans had conquered their own hostile planet, and they would be terrified. But Dr. Okafor was shaking her head. This is different, James. They're not meeting us in peacetime. They're desperate. Their children are dying. That makes it worse, Torres argued. If we show up now, they'll think we're just another predator species coming to take advantage of their weakness. Sarah looked around her bridge. Her crew was small but experienced. They had all grown up knowing that humanity was alone in the galaxy by choice. The other species feared them too much for real friendship. Dr. Okafor, Sarah said slowly, in your professional opinion, what would happen if we responded to this message? The doctor was quiet for a moment. Honestly, they would probably be terrified of us at first. We're everything they've been taught to fear, predators from a death world with a history of violence. But, Sarah could hear there was more. But they asked for warriors. Not saviors, not conquerors. Warriors who could teach them. That tells me something about their psychology. They're not just prey animals looking for a stronger predator to hide behind. They want to learn to protect themselves. Torres crossed his arms. And you think we should risk breaking 2 centuries of isolation policy for these aliens we've never met? Dr. Okafor looked at him steadily. I think we should risk it because of who we are. Yes, we're predators. Yes, we come from a death world. Yes, we have a violent history. But we also have something most predator species don't have. What's that? Sarah asked. We protect the innocent. It's built into our DNA. We're pack hunters, yes, but we're also pack protectors. When humans see something weaker being hurt by something stronger, we don't just walk away. We can't. Sarah thought about this. She remembered stories from Earth's history. Stories of humans who risked everything to save strangers. Stories of soldiers who died protecting people they had never met. Stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things because it was the right thing to do. Lieutenant Rodriguez, she said finally, send a message to Fleet Command. Request permission to make contact with the Calorian Republic. Yes, ma'am, Rodriguez said, but he looked worried. What should I tell them the reason is? Sarah smiled. Tell them we received a distress call from a peaceful species being attacked by aggressive predators. Tell them we're recommending humanitarian intervention. Torres shook his head. Admiral Jackson is going to have a fit. You know how careful Fleet Command is about first contact situations. Then we'd better make sure our request is very convincing, Sarah said. 2 days later, the response came back from Earth. Admiral Jackson himself appeared on the communication screen. He was an older man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been in charge of humanity's expansion into space for 20 years. Captain Chen, the Admiral said, I've read your report about the Calorian situation. I've also read Dr. Okafor's psychological analysis and your recommendation for intervention. Sarah waited. She could feel her crew watching her. I want to be very clear about something, the Admiral continued. If we do this, we're breaking 2 centuries of isolation policy. We're risking exposure to the entire galaxy. Every species out there will know that humans are real, not just stories. I understand, sir. But, the Admiral said, and Sarah felt her heart jump. I also understand that sometimes doing the right thing is more important than being safe. Dr. Okafor's analysis suggests that the Calorians might actually be ready for contact with us. And frankly, I'm tired of hiding. The Admiral leaned forward. Here are your orders, Captain. Take the Resilience to Calorian space. Make contact with their government. Assess the situation. If you believe we can help them without causing a galactic panic, you have my permission to offer assistance. What kind of assistance, sir? Admiral Jackson smiled grimly. The kind we're good at. Teaching people how to survive the impossible. After the transmission ended, Sarah looked around her bridge. Her crew was staring at her with expressions of excitement and fear. Well, she said, it looks like we're making first contact. Captain, said Dr. Okafor, there's something else we should consider. What? The Calorians asked for teachers, not saviors. That means we can't just show up and win their war for them. We have to teach them to win it themselves. Torres nodded slowly. That might actually work better. If we conquer the Vrex for them, the galaxy will see us as just another aggressive species. But if we teach them to defend themselves, then we become something else, Sarah finished. We become the species that helps others become strong. Sarah stood up from her captain's chair. Set course for Calorian space. Maximum speed. As the Resilience changed direction and accelerated toward the unknown, Sarah thought about what they were about to do. They were going to meet a species that had every reason to fear them. They were going to try to teach peace-loving plant-eaters how to fight like humans. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was probably impossible, but it was also the most human thing they could do. The UES Resilience dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Thesara system. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge looking at the main screen that showed the Calorian homeworld in the distance. "Report," she said to her crew. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his station. "Long-range sensors are picking up Vrex scout ships at the outer edge of the system. Looks like they're testing the Calorian defenses. And the Calorian response? Minimal. They're using defensive shields and some kind of energy weapons, but they're not pursuing the Vrex ships when they retreat. It's like they're only defending, never attacking." Dr. Okafor nodded. "That matches their psychology profile. Prey species typically can't conceive of offensive action. Their instincts tell them to hide or run, not to chase and fight." Commander Torres was studying the tactical display. "The Vrex are probing for weaknesses. Classic predator behavior. They'll keep testing until they find a hole in the defenses. Then they'll pour through in force." Sarah felt a chill. "How long do the Calorians have?" "Based on the Vrex patterns," Torres said grimly, "maybe a week. 2 at the most." Sarah made her decision. "Open a communication channel to the Calorian government." The response came quickly. The main screen showed a room full of Calorian officials. They all had the same silver fur and large eyes that Sarah had seen in the original message. But now those eyes were wide with fear. One of the Calorians stepped forward. He was older than the others, with fur that had turned almost white. "Unknown vessel. This is Counselor Varen of the Calorian Republic. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Sarah straightened her uniform. This was the moment that would change everything. "Counselor Varen, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Resilience. We received your message asking for help." The silence that followed was so complete that Sarah could hear her own heartbeat. The Calorians on the screen were staring at her with expressions she couldn't read. Finally, Counselor Varen spoke. His voice was very quiet. You said United Earthship. You are from the Death World?" "Yes, Counselor. We are humans." Another Calorian whispered something that Sarah's translator picked up. "Predators. Persistence hunters. Forward-facing eyes." Sarah could see the fear spreading through the group. Several Calorians had stepped back from the screen. Others were whispering to each other in voices too quiet for the translator to catch. Dr. Okafor leaned over to Sarah. "Captain, we need to be very careful here. Their prey instincts are telling them to run. We have maybe 30 seconds before they cut communication and disappear." Sarah thought fast. She had to find a way to overcome millions of years of evolution that told these creatures to fear predators like her. "Counselor Varen," she said softly. "I know you're afraid. I know that everything about us frightens you. But I want you to think about why we're here." Varen was trembling, but he didn't run. "Why?" "You sent a message asking for warriors to teach you how to protect your children. We traveled across the galaxy to answer that call. If we were just predators looking for prey, would we bother with teaching? Wouldn't we just take what we wanted?" The Calorians were still afraid, but they were listening. Sarah continued. "Yes, we are from a death world. Yes, we are predators by evolution. But we are also something else. We are protectors. On our world, the strong protect the weak, not because they have to, but because they choose to." "I don't understand," Varen said. "Predators take from prey. They don't protect prey." Dr. Okafor stepped into view of the communication screen. "Counselor, may I explain something about human evolution?" Varen nodded slowly. "Humans are unusual predators. Yes, we hunt, but we also live in groups. We raise our children together. We share food with those who cannot hunt. We care for the sick and injured. We have something called empathy. We feel pain when others feel pain." "But you still hunt," another Calorian said. "You still kill?" "Yes," Dr. Okafor admitted. "But we also know the difference between hunting for survival and killing for pleasure. We hunt when we must. We protect when we can." Sarah could see that some of the Calorians were beginning to understand. Their fear was still there, but it was mixed with curiosity now. "Counselor Varen," Sarah said, "I have a proposal. Let me come to your world alone, no weapons, no guards, just me. Let us talk face to face. If you don't like what I have to say, I'll leave and never come back." The Calorians talked among themselves in their own language. Sarah couldn't understand the words, but the tone was urgent and worried. Finally, Varen looked back at the screen. "Captain Chen, if you come to our world, you will be surrounded by prey animals who have every instinct telling them to fear you. Some of my people might panic. Some might try to run. Others might—" He paused. "Others might try to hurt you first before you can hurt them." Sarah smiled. "Counselor, I grew up on a world where the weather could kill me, the ground could explode under my feet, and most of the animals wanted to eat me. I think I can handle being around some nervous herbivores." Despite his fear, Varen almost smiled back. "Very well, Captain Chen, you may come to Thessera Prime, but please, move slowly. Speak softly. Many of my people have never seen a predator species before." 2 hours later, Sarah's shuttle landed at the Calorian capital city. As she walked down the shuttle ramp, she could see crowds of Calorians watching from a distance. They stayed far back, but they were watching. The city was beautiful. The buildings were curved and flowing, like they had grown from the ground instead of being built. Gardens full of flowers and flowing water were everywhere. It was the kind of place that could only be built by people who had never known war. Counselor Varen was waiting for her with a small group of other officials. They were all trying to look brave, but Sarah could see their hands shaking. Sarah walked slowly toward them, keeping her movements smooth and non-threatening. When she was still several feet away, she stopped and waited. "Thank you for allowing me to come, Counselor," she said quietly. "Thank you for coming, Captain Chen," Varen replied, "though I admit, many of us still don't understand why you would help us." Sarah looked around at the beautiful city, at the gardens and the art and the peaceful buildings. Then she looked back at Varen and his frightened officials. "Counselor, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "If you saw a child being hurt by an adult, what would you do?" Varen looked confused. "I would help the child, of course. Any decent person would. Even if the child was a different species? Even if helping might put you in danger?" "Yes," Varen said without hesitation. "A child is a child," Sarah nodded. "Then you understand exactly why we're here. The Vrex are the adults hurting children. You and your people are the children. We can't just walk away." For the first time since the communication had begun, one of the Calorian officials stepped forward. She was smaller than the others, with brighter silver fur. "My name is Dr. Kess," she said. "I study alien psychology. Are you saying that humans have parental instincts toward other species?" Dr. Okafor had been right about being careful with first contact, but she had also been right about something else. These weren't just prey animals looking for a stronger predator to hide behind. They were intelligent beings trying to understand a situation that was completely outside their experience. "Not exactly parental," Sarah said, "but we do have protective instincts. When we see something innocent being threatened by something dangerous, we feel a need to help. It's part of who we are." Dr. Kess was taking notes on a small device. "Fascinating. A predator species with protective behaviors toward non-related individuals. It's not that unusual," Sarah said. "Many pack hunters on Earth show similar behaviors. The difference is that humans extended those behaviors beyond our own species." Counselor Varen was looking at Sarah with an expression she couldn't read. Finally, he said, "Captain Chen, assuming we trust you, and I'm beginning to think we might, what exactly are you proposing to teach us?" Sarah smiled. "How to fight like humans, Counselor. Not how to become predators, but how to survive like we do. How to never give up, never surrender, and never let anyone take what matters to you. And you think prey animals can learn to do that?" "Counselor," Sarah said, "humans aren't the strongest species on our world. We're not the fastest or the most dangerous. But we're still here, and most of the stronger species aren't. Do you know why?" Varen shook his head. "Because we refuse to die. We adapt, we learn, and we never stop trying. Those aren't predator traits, Counselor. Those are survivor traits, and any species can learn to be survivors." As Sarah spoke, she could see something changing in the Calorians around her. The fear was still there, but it was being joined by something else. Something that looked almost like hope. The war room in the Calorian capital was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Instead of maps and tactical displays, the walls showed beautiful murals of peaceful landscapes. Instead of weapons, the tables held flowers and small sculptures. It was a room designed for making art, not planning battles. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the center of the room with her senior staff. Around them, dozens of Colorians tried to look like they understood what was happening. Most of them looked confused and frightened. "The first thing we need to understand," Sarah said to the assembled group, "is that the Vreks are not just stronger than you. They think differently than you. They see the universe as a place where the strong take from the weak." Counselor Varen raised one of his long-fingered hands. "But surely they can be reasoned with. Surely they don't want to destroy everything." Commander Torres shook his head. "Counselor, with respect, that's prey animal thinking. You assume that everyone wants the same things you want. Peace, cooperation, mutual benefit. The Vreks don't want those things. They want dominance." Dr. Kess, the Colorian psychologist, was taking notes frantically. "So you're saying we can't understand them because we're not predators?" "Not exactly," said Dr. Okafor. "You can understand them, but you have to think about it differently. Imagine if every interaction was a contest to see who was stronger. Imagine if showing weakness meant death. Imagine if the only way to be safe was to make everyone else afraid of you." The Colorians looked horrified at this idea. Several of them made small sounds of distress. "That's terrible," whispered one of them. "How can anyone live that way?" "By being very good at violence," said Colonel Reyes, Sarah's military advisor. "Which brings us to your problem. You've never had to be good at violence. You've never even had to think about it." Sarah could see that the Colorians were becoming overwhelmed. She needed to give them something concrete to focus on. "Let's start with something simple," she said. "Show us your defensive capabilities." The next few hours were both impressive and frustrating. The Colorians had incredible technology. Their shields could stop almost any attack. Their sensors could detect enemies from vast distances. Their ships could move faster than anything the humans had ever seen. But they used all of this technology purely defensively. Their shields only protected their own positions. Their sensors only warned them of attacks. Their fast ships only ran away from battles. "It's like watching someone use a sword as a walking stick," Torres muttered to Sarah. "They have everything they need to win, but they're only thinking about not losing." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Thax, a young Colorian engineer, was studying the human weapons that Sarah had reluctantly agreed to demonstrate. "I don't understand," Thax said, holding one of the human energy rifles. "This weapon is much less powerful than our shield generators. How do you use it to attack something that our shields can easily stop?" Colonel Reyes smiled. "Show me one of your shields." Thax activated a personal shield generator. A shimmering barrier appeared around him, strong enough to stop anything the humans could throw at it. "Very impressive," Reyes said. "Now can you move while that shield is active?" "Of course," Thax said, walking around the room. "Can you project it away from your body?" Thax looked confused. "Why would I want to do that?" Reyes looked at Sarah. "Captain, may I?" Sarah nodded. "Thax," Reyes said, "what if instead of using that shield to hide behind, you used it as a wall to push forward with?" The young Colorian stared at him. "Push forward? But that would mean moving toward the enemy instead of away from them." "Exactly." Thax was quiet for a long moment. Then his eyes grew wide. "You mean, use our shields as weapons?" "Not weapons exactly," Reyes said. "Tools. Protection that lets you advance instead of just survive." Within hours, Thax had modified a shield generator to project a moving barrier that could advance across a battlefield while protecting the soldiers behind it. It wasn't a weapon, but it was aggressive in a way that no Colorian technology had ever been before. "This is incredible," Dr. Kess said, watching the demonstration. "We've had this technology for centuries, but we never thought to use it offensively." "That's because you're not predators," Dr. Okafor explained. "Your instincts tell you to make yourself safe, not to make the enemy unsafe. But humans think about both." The training accelerated as reports came in of Vreks forces gathering at the edge of the system. The humans worked with small groups of Colorians, teaching them concepts that were completely foreign to their peaceful nature. Chief Petty Officer Kim taught them about supply lines and logistics, how to keep fighting even when resources were limited. "Wars aren't won by the strongest fighters," she explained. "They're won by the side that can keep fighting the longest." Lieutenant Rodriguez worked with their communications specialists, teaching them about coordination and battlefield intelligence. "Information is a weapon too," he said. "If you know where the enemy is and they don't know where you are, you're already winning." But the hardest lesson was psychological. The Calorians had to learn to accept that some of their people might die in order to save the rest. This is the part I hate most about being human, Sarah told Counselor Varen during one of their private conversations. We've learned to calculate acceptable losses. We can send people into danger knowing that some of them won't come back. Varen looked sick. How can you do that? How can you choose who lives and who dies? We don't choose, Sarah said quietly. We just accept that sometimes the choice is between losing some people or losing everyone. It's the darkest part of survival, Counselor. But it's also necessary. The breakthrough came when young Thax made a connection that surprised everyone. I understand now, he announced to a gathering of human and Calorian leaders. You didn't learn to fight because you were predators. You learned to fight because your world tried to kill you every day and you decided to live anyway. Sarah stared at him. What do you mean? Earth, Thax said excitedly. Dr. Okafor told us about it. Earthquakes, storms, volcanoes, dangerous animals. Your planet was trying to kill you constantly, but instead of finding a safer planet, you learned to survive the dangerous one. That's actually a very good way to think about it, Dr. Okafor said slowly. Thax continued. So when you fight, you're not thinking like predators hunting prey. You're thinking like survivors refusing to die. That's different, isn't it? Sarah felt something click in her mind. Thax, you just figured out something very important. We're not trying to teach you to be predators. We're trying to teach you to be survivors. The young Calorian nodded eagerly. And the Vrex aren't just predators hunting us. They're a threat to our survival, like a volcano or an earthquake. Exactly, said Colonel Reyes. You don't negotiate with a volcano. You don't run away from an earthquake forever. You learn to survive them. The change in the Calorians after that realization was remarkable. They stopped thinking about the Vrex as an evil they had to hide from and started thinking about them as a problem they had to solve. Dr. Kess worked with her people to overcome their panic responses when thinking about violence. We're not becoming predators, she told them. We're learning to protect our families the way humans protect theirs. The shield wall tactics that Thax had developed became the foundation of a new kind of warfare. Calorian forces would advance behind moving barriers of energy, using their superior defensive technology to get close enough to use their weapons effectively. But more importantly, they learned the human concept of never giving up. When Vrex forces tried to outflank them, the Calorians didn't retreat. They adapted. When their first tactics didn't work, they developed new ones. When they lost battles, they learned from them and fought better the next time. They're not fighting like predators, Torres observed, watching a training exercise where Calorian forces successfully held off a simulated Vrex attack. They're fighting like humans, like people who refuse to lose. Sarah nodded, feeling proud of their strange students, which might be exactly what this galaxy needs. As reports came in of the main Vrex fleet approaching the system, Sarah realized that the real test was about to begin. The Calorians had learned the theory of human-style warfare. Now they would find out if prey animals could really learn to fight like Deathworlders when everything they loved was at stake. The answer would come very soon. Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship Bloodhunter, staring at the blue and green world of Thesara Prime. In 30 years of conquest, he had seen many worlds surrender before his fleet. The pattern was always the same. The prey species would try to negotiate, then try to hide, then finally submit when they realized resistance was hopeless. But something felt different about this system. Report, Krex growled to his tactical officer. The Calorian defense fleet has taken position between us and their homeworld, the officer replied. But Admiral, there's something strange. They're not maintaining defensive formations. Krex looked at the tactical display. The Calorian ships were arranged in a pattern he had never seen before. Instead of clustering around their world like frightened animals, they were spread out in a line, moving toward his fleet. They're advancing? Krex couldn't hide his surprise. Prey animals don't advance. On Thesara Prime, Captain Sarah Chen watched the same tactical display in the Calorian command center. Around her, Calorian officers worked at their stations with a calmness that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. Vrex fleet is beginning their attack run, reported Thax from the communication station. His voice was steady, though Sarah could see his hands trembling slightly. Counselor Varen stood beside Sarah, wearing the simple gray uniform that the Calorians had adopted for their new military. Captain, I want you to know that whatever happens today, we're grateful for what you've taught us. Sarah smiled. Counselor, what we taught you was already inside you. We just helped you find it. The first exchange of fire lit up the space between the two fleets. The Vreks opened with their standard tactic, overwhelming, firepower designed to break enemy formations and cause panic. But the Calorian response was unlike anything the Vreks had ever encountered. Instead of scattering or retreating, the Calorian ships moved forward behind walls of shimmering energy. The Vreks weapons that should have destroyed them were absorbed by shields that moved like living things, flowing around the ships and protecting them while they advanced. "What in the seven hells is that?" Krex demanded, watching his most powerful weapons splash harmlessly against the moving barriers. "Unknown technology, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. "The energy signatures are Calorian, but they're being used in ways we've never seen before." The Calorian fleet continued its advance, their shield walls pushing through the Vreks barrage like a tide that couldn't be stopped. When they reached optimal range, they opened fire. Their weapons were the same energy cannons they had always used, but now they were being fired with tactical precision instead of desperate defense. Focused on specific targets instead of random shots. Coordinated instead of panicked. 3 Vreks destroyers exploded in the first volley. "Impossible," Krex roared. "They're prey. They don't fight like this." But Captain Sarah Chen, watching from the surface, knew exactly what was happening. The Calorians weren't fighting like prey anymore. They were fighting like humans, like survivors who refused to lose. The space battle raged for hours. Every time the Vreks adapted to Calorian tactics, the Calorians adapted in return. When the Vreks tried to outflank them, they found new shield positions waiting. When the Vreks concentrated their fire, the Calorians dispersed and struck from multiple directions. Most importantly, when Calorian ships were damaged or destroyed, the rest of the fleet didn't panic. They mourned their losses and kept fighting. They had learned the hardest human lesson, that sometimes people die in wars, but that doesn't mean you stop protecting those who are still alive. Admiral Krex found himself fighting an enemy he didn't understand. These weren't the prey animals his intelligence reports had described. These were warriors who fought with the determination of cornered predators, but the coordination of pack hunters. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 40% of our fleet. The enemy losses are much lighter. I recommend we withdraw and request reinforcements." Krex stared at the tactical display. In 3 decades of conquest, he had never faced an enemy that got stronger as the battle went on. But the Calorians were doing exactly that, learning from every exchange, adapting to every Vreks tactic, becoming more dangerous with each passing hour. "No," he growled. "We don't retreat from prey animals. Launch everything we have at their homeworld. If we can't destroy their fleet, we'll destroy what they're trying to protect." The Vreks reserve force, including Krex's personal assault fleet, broke away from the main battle and headed directly for Thesara Prime. On the planet's surface, warning alarms began to sound. The Calorian civilians, millions of them who had never known war, looked up at the sky where they could see the lights of battle. But instead of panic, something remarkable happened. The civilians began to move with purpose. Families helped each other reach shelters. Emergency services activated smoothly. Children were kept calm by adults who had learned that fear was natural but panic was a choice. "They're not running," Sarah observed with amazement. "They're preparing to fight," Counselor Varen nodded. "We learned something else from you, Captain. We learned that civilians can be warriors too when they need to be." As Krex's assault fleet approached the planet, they found themselves facing not just the remaining Calorian defense ships, but a coordinated planetary defense system that had been rebuilt using human tactics. The orbital defense stations didn't just fire at the attacking ships, they created overlapping fields of fire that made it impossible for the Vreks to approach without taking heavy losses. The planetary shields didn't just absorb damage, they channeled and redirected energy to power the planet's weapons. Most importantly, the defenders fought with a unity of purpose that Krex had never encountered. Every ship, every station, every weapon was part of a coordinated defense that treated the Vreks assault like a natural disaster to be survived rather than an enemy to be feared. "This is impossible," Krex muttered, watching his assault fleet take devastating losses as it tried to break through the planetary defenses. "Prey animals don't fight like this." But his tactical officer had been studying the battle patterns, and he had reached a disturbing conclusion. "Admiral, I don't think they're fighting like prey animals anymore. I think they're fighting like something else." "Like what?" like the Deathworld predators from the old stories. The ones that never give up and never stop learning. Krex felt ice form in his veins. The Deathworld predators were supposed to be myths. Scary stories that parents told children to make them behave. But if they were real, are you suggesting that the humans are here? He asked quietly. Before his officer could answer, the communication system activated. A face appeared on the screen. A face with forward-facing eyes and flat teeth and smooth skin. A face that belonged to a creature that should not exist. Admiral Krex, the human said calmly. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Resilience. I think it's time we talked. The bridge of the Blood Hunter went completely silent. Every Vrex warrior stared at the screen in horror. The nightmare predators were real. They were here. And they had been teaching the prey animals how to fight. You, Krex whispered. You did this to them. Sarah's expression didn't change. We didn't do anything to them, Admiral. We simply helped them remember something they already knew. What? That survival isn't about being the strongest or the most dangerous. It's about refusing to give up. It's about learning and adapting and protecting what matters to you. The Calorians always had these abilities, Admiral. They just needed to remember how to use them. Krex looked at the tactical display. His fleet was broken. His assault had failed. And the enemies he faced weren't prey animals anymore. They were something far more dangerous. They were prey animals who had learned to think like Deathworld predators. What do you want? He asked finally. We want you to leave, Sarah said simply. We want you to go back to your territory and leave peaceful species alone. We want you to remember that the galaxy is big enough for everyone. And if we refuse, Sarah's smile was not friendly. Then you'll discover what happens when Deathworld predators stop being teachers and start being what we were born to be. The threat hung in the space between the ships. Krex understood what she was saying. The humans had been holding back. They had been teaching and guiding instead of conquering. But if pushed, they would show the Vrex what real predators could do. This isn't over, Krex said. Yes, it is, Sarah replied. Because now the galaxy knows that prey animals can learn to be survivors. And there are a lot more prey species out there than there are predators like you. As the Vrex fleet retreated from Thessera system, Sarah stood in the Calorian command center watching the tactical display. Around her, Calorian officers cheered and celebrated their victory. But Sarah was thinking about something else. She was thinking about a message that was already traveling across the galaxy. A message from the Calorian Republic to every peaceful species that had ever been threatened by aggressive predators. We survived, the message said. The humans taught us how. If you face extinction, there is hope. Contact Earth. They will not save you. They will teach you to save yourselves. As Sarah watched the stars through the command center's viewing windows, she knew that humanity's long isolation was over. They were no longer the galaxy's hidden nightmare predators.